Hello, guys. So I want to talk about um, another AI program that Microsoft has been showing to the whole globe. It is the Microsoft Bing Image Creator powered by DALI 3. Now, this is a program that I've been using since March when it was publicly released onto the internet. And I have really enjoyed using this program. So here is my kind of review of this particular program on the internet. So, in comparison with, say, the Microsoft Paint co-creator tool, this is based on the internet. So you go to bing.com/create and you get this page here. So this is integrated into the Bing chat system, or currently now um, the Copilot system that Microsoft has just recently released to enterprise level customers. So the thing you have to understand about this system is that all this AI generated art is based on kind of reading through all the images on the internet. This is both a blessing and a curse. So essentially, what it means is that it instead of it taking so much time to develop an AI to be able to create images, we are using the images on the internet in order to speed up the process of creating a AI that is competent at creating art. So, but it also creates a kind of twisting of artistic expectations. So, one of my interests is in history. And one of the things that I like using the Bing Image Creator for is creating historical images because I run multiple blogs based on history. So, one of my favorite particular periods of history is the Byzantine Empire. So, based on, you can watch my other video where I talked about in the co-creator, about the co-creator, I talked about trying to create an image about Byzantine senators. So I'm going to try to create a image here. Byzantine senators in the Senate House in Constantinople. And so um, I'm going to specify in 530 AD in the time of Emperor Justinian and Theodora. And we're going to see what this creates. So, as you can clearly see, this is kind of a mixed bag. You never know what you're going to get with this thing. Um, it can go all over the place. So, what do we see here with these images? Well, as I stated before, this is kind of an example of kind of the limitations of AI. So, what is the AI really doing? Well, these men are not wearing the clothes of the 6th century at all. This is largely based on paintings that were done in the 16th and 17th century by incredibly famous painters. Um, there is a sense that this is kind of like what the painters would have done. You know, it would have been in an kind of with a lot of historical inaccuracies, but this was kind of within the vibes of the time. You would often see Jesus or the Virgin Mary dressed in the clothes of the times. Or Roman soldier martyrs, for example, would be dressed in the style of Spanish conquistadors. So this is obviously not what I want because in the 6th century they didn't dress like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the prompt And going to specify Byzantine senator with his wife in the 6th century. So maybe it will give me a more realistic uh, vision of what those people may have looked like at the time. Once again, it is a mixed bag. One of the things that the AI is excellent at doing is creating Byzantine like mosaics. But unfortunately, it still is not able to give me really an image of what these people would have looked like in the 6th century. Maybe the closest one that we have here is this third image here. Um, it is very elaborate, and obviously, and what she's wearing. I mean, Byzantine women didn't really dress like this at all. This is more like Muslim costume, in at least in the modern age. Um, you would have seen maybe elite women maybe wearing this, after the time of Heraclius, but Theodora did not go around dressed like this. Honestly, um, she was an actress, a prostitute. She didn't dress like this. Um, and these are excellent examples of Byzantine, maybe a more photorealistic, vision of Byzantine art. But it's still not what I'm looking for. This is one of the biggest issues with this whole thing. So if we go and look at another historical period, let's say pagan Rome, Roman Emperor Augustus and his wife in the palace in Rome. So we clearly don't have images of Augustus in the flesh, but you know, we have statues of him. Maybe the AI will give us something interesting, right? So with pagan Rome, it seems like the AI is better able to understand this. But as usual, one of the problems I have with AI art, particularly, is that it oftentimes creates way too ornamental, too overly glory. I mean, this is an example of just kind of really kind of Michelangelo type. It's over the top. It's so grandiose. There's a lack of realism to it. I think this one is the best, but still, this isn't really what I'm looking for. Will it change if I say in if I say in a realistic painting? Maybe that will change it. It's really hard to say with these things. It's really a mixed bag. You never know what you're going to get with these things. So, yes, these are better than these are better. I mean, these are kind of maybe what maybe Augustus may have commissioned if they had this kind of style of painting at the time. But it's still kind of, it has this kind of 19th, like before Monet, before Picasso. I mean, let's be honest here, like a lot of this is kind of reminiscent of 18th century, 19th century paintings, like paintings of like, the French painter who painted Napoleon going through the Alps with the names of all the great conquerors on the rocks nearby. I mean, this is not really, you know, this is kind of not exactly what I want. So here's what we can do. I'm going to go for a more recent historical period, but I'm going to change things up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is U.S. President, um, the White House with his wife in the 1890s. So this one, we have photographs of Benjamin Harrison, Grover Cleveland, and Mr. and William McKinley. So we clearly can have better representation here, right? So generally speaking, when it comes to, you know, when we really want to think about how to represent people with with AI tools, with photography, it makes it much easier for the AI. When it don't have photography, it has to rely on paintings, which, while they're incredibly great and powerful things, they still are not true representations of reality compared to a photograph. Now, obviously, this thing is making mistakes. I mean, there are flying machines. There were no flying machines other than hot air balloons in the 1890s. Um, you know, this is pretty nice. Honestly, this one's pretty good. I mean, the thing you have to understand though is that the fact that the AI is able to do this is an incredible thing. In it is it's an amazing thing. You know, there is no image that exists that of this, and it's able to create this image. However, it is still an imperfect process. So if we were to, kind of, look at things from a different perspective and like say, well, what if we did the 1960s? John F. Kennedy, Lyndon Baines Johnson, and Richard Milhous Nixon. What would we get? Now that's a more recent time period, and clearly, these aren't the real people, but um, this is kind of you know this is maybe some alternate reality with a different president or whatever, but you know this is pretty nice and pretty cool actually that it's able to do this because these people never were actually there, but it's able to give you something that literally you could think maybe that was in some alternate reality another president, another first lady. um, so and you could this particular photograph, the third photograph or image, you could fool people with this photograph thinking that it was a real thing. um, I think where the AI really struggles with historical periods is particularly with the further back you go and the less representation you get. The Byzantine Empire often doesn't have a lot of, um, you know, it doesn't have a lot of representation compared to the Romans. There isn't a lot of frescoes. There is no Pompeii in the Byzantine Empire because the Ottomans took it over and essentially they Islamized everything, right? And this is kind of one of the issues, right? I mean, if we go and say Ottoman Sultan with his wife in the 16th century, and the Ottomans are also another um, historical topic that I'm very interested in, along with U.S. history. Um, so, what we see here is this is a bit more realistic, honestly, than the Byzantine depictions. Um, the most popular sultan of the 16th century was Suleiman the Magnificent, the son of Sultan Selim. And, you can clearly see a minaret here on the Hagia Sophia. Here's another minaret, ships, uh, you know, fruits and stuff, carpets. Here, I mean, this is kind of, I'm not quite sure what this is. It's more like Eastern Orthodox or something, but I mean, it does understand, like, that, they do wear turbans in the Islamic world, um, and how, a sultan would look like. And I feel like, this is one of those types of representations that kind of makes sense, even though it's somewhat inaccurate sometimes. So this is probably one of the hardest aspects. So if we do another one, like, a Spanish queen with her, son and daughter in the palace in the 17th century. This is one of the great miracles of, of this machine, of whatever this is, this AI tool. It's, I can write literally anything in this prompt and it will create stuff. But the problem is your mileage may vary. So, as I've stated before, it is one of these things where, kind of the historical clothing is right and sometimes it's not. Sometimes like the arms are out of place, and, like, what the heck is this here? I mean, it's kind of weird and messed up. And, you know, I mean, it can get better in terms of how, the human faces look and how textures look, and making sure human arms are in the right places and everything. So I think this is pretty satisfactory. Um, so, but the more complex the prompt, the harder it is, right? So let's go to the East Asia. So Chinese emperor, um, you know, I'm going to give a real person's name, Sheng Long, with his wife in 1760. And he lived for many years, and was ruler for over 60 years. So there are great representations of him. Unfortunately, this is not how Manchu emperors dressed. Their hair didn't look like this. It was in the queue, and they forced every man in China to have a queue. This is more of the Ming dynasty. Let's try that again. And this is kind of one of the issues, that you never know what you're going to get. There's no warning. you know, One of the biggest problems, though, with this is that, this clothing, this style, you know, it's more reminiscent of the Ming emperors, of the Tang emperors. It doesn't fit the Manchu mold, because the Manchu people have their own ways of dressing themselves. And I find it quite confusing why the AI is not able to recognize the Chinese Emperor Qinglong. And there's a representation of Qinglong, the great painting that was done, and yet it cannot recognize that. So I don't know. So you clearly can see that this tool, you know, is, a mixed bag. So if we type in Chinese Manchu Emperor in 1761, and I'm choosing that year for a reason, in order to kind of maybe narrow it down, maybe 1760 doesn't work. But if we do Chinese Manchu Emperor, still we get the stereotypical view of the Chinese Emperor. He's wearing a beard. Hmm. So what if we say Chinese Manchu Emperor with a Q? Um, just want to make sure that I've done that right. Yes, Chinese Q. So here's the thing. In 1762 or 1761 again. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure it's going to get it right. I mean, this is one of those limitations. And once again, the stereotypical image of the emperor is one that, it's able, and in fact, surprisingly, the AI is able to create Chinese calligraphy, which is very impressive. But unfortunately, the AI is still giving me stereotypical views of the Chinese emperor, who was generally depicted in many, many paintings across Chinese history as being with long beards. And they're the Chinese crown, emperor's crown. I mean, the Manchu dynasty's crown did not look like this at all. But one thing it does get right is the Chinese calligraphy, the texts, and it really understands that. But this is kind of a mixture of Western and Eastern styles. And Chinese painters and artists often did put their names in the Chinese calligraphy on the painting so that people would identify the painting with them. So, but the problem is, even though I wrote in Q in the prompt, I still got the stereotypical view of the emperor. Why is that? Maybe it's because those images of those emperors are so predominant in the search results that the AI is only seeing those. But I highly doubt that because Manchu emperors have photographs of themselves. Puyi, the the end of the Manchu dynasty was photographed with the traditional Q, I think. So it is really surprising to me that the AI is not able to um, look up this imagery. Because if we look at pictures of the emperor, you know, he he was a very, very young child when he became emperor and only really ruled for about, you know, 3 years until the 1911 revolution. But clearly he wore a queue, but he cut it off after the revolution during the Republic of China and then during the rule of Mao as the ruler of the, communist, the People's Republic of China. But we clearly have examples of Manchu clothing and hair dresses. And yet the AI is not able to recognize this. Why is that? It's always giving me the stereotypical view of the emperor before the Manchu conquest. As I would say, that this is one of the limitations of AI today. While the AI may be able to train itself on many images, it's always giving me stereotypical views of what the emperor is supposed to look like. And this is an emperor from the time of the Tang dynasty. I mean, this is kind of what the emperors, generally speaking, were looking like. But if we take a look at the Manchu emperors, we clearly can see this is the headdress or the crown of the emperor. You know, and yet we're not seeing these being represented in the AI representations. So this is a clear limitation of the AI technology we have at the moment. It may be because, Asian images on the internet are not as prevalent. Because if I say US president, once again, US president in uh, the 1830s with his son, we're going to get more accurate images. And that's what's so really annoying about this. So it only gave me one image, but this is definitely within line of the clothing of the times. And honestly, you could fool a couple of people with this. So what does it say about, what exactly, where is AI art going and what does it mean? Well, we are still in early days here. I believe maybe in 10 years, maybe We won't have as many artists or maybe stock people, people working with stock images as much. But I would have to say that the Bing image creator is probably one of my favorite things on the internet. It is one of the best type of tools you could ever have. And it may not do everything right, but it's definitely well worth the time. I recommend using this tool for anybody who wants to use anything on their blogs, make thumbnails, make banners for their websites. It's an incredibly useful and powerful tool that will help you get the job done. Because you have to remember, before the image creators, before the AI generators, you would have to hunt down on these search engines, you know, and you would have to go and look at this and look for these search engine, go for the search engine, and you would find these images of emperors, you know, but oftentimes it was heavily reliant on what somebody else had done, you know, and there was only a small number of images that were available, you know. And as much as I love this original art, it sometimes becomes difficult to differentiate, what exactly, your images are because there are not enough of them. So either you have to make them yourself or you simply don't use them at all. With the image creator, we're able to now create images on demand without needing an artist. While an artist could definitely patch this up and make it look better, it will definitely suffice for people who don't necessarily need the most professional work done. And that's what's important. It helps speeds up the process. For things that are more abstract and don't need, lots and lots of, detail, maybe something like a chatbot communicating to a human through thought bubbles. Could be used by a marketing company without needing to pay for an artist to do this. For more complex images, such as these, they may require a human touch. But overall, what I think we can learn from looking at this tool is that AI art is here to stay, and that the Bing image creator is a definitely very important tool in the tool set of any artist and anybody who's looking to beautify their websites. Thank you for watching this video, and please remember to subscribe.